Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Two Way. So, a few changes since we last spoke. Just logistical issues with my plans. I won't bore you with the details, but I'm now a passenger in a car headed to Philadelphia. And the other is I got very nice comments on the Ann Seltzer Two Way, but people said we want to talk about other things besides the Ann Seltzer's fall. So I'll give you a brief sense of where I think things are, and then we'll just open up to questions that people have or comments people want to make. Um, so I went to the Trump rally in Lancaster today, and a couple things. First of all, he was extremely low energy, and forget the weave. It was like 90% the worst nightmare of like every Republican strategist um, and politician, which is to say, he barely talked about inflation, immigration, uh, uh, foreign wars. It was all grievance. He talked on and on about how there shouldn't be early voting. He made a joke about the press corps being shot. He, insulted Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't know what it was about, but it was a complete regression from, staying on the prompter and staying focused. It's not 100% that, but it was a much higher percentage of that than I've seen in the recent previous rallies. I don't know what that's about. I'm trying to figure that out. Um, on the pro Trump's going to win side, in terms of data, the early vote continues to be a problem in terms of how much of a lead she has and the underperformance of black voters. Um, and let's see tomorrow where we are in Pennsylvania. But I think the delta of the Democratic lead is going to be much smaller than even Democrats said they needed to win Pennsylvania. We'll see, but that's something to watch. In addition, the kind of conventional wisdom amongst Democrats is, and they're buoyed by Ann's poll, is she's closing strong Trumpism. And that undecided that David Plouffe argued last week are breaking her way. I think right now, people ask me all the time what's going to happen. I think right now, I continue to believe that for a while, it's not going to be close. Either the makeup of the electorate is going to be 55% female and she's going to win, or it's not and she's going to lose. And that could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be different state to state. I think in 6 or 7 of the states, the electorate will be so strongly women and so women so strongly for her that she'll win, or not. And that'd be my guess right now, that it's going to be one way or the other. Democratic Senate races are looking better than they were a couple weeks ago when there started to be panic, which is to say, although Wisconsin is still a concern for the Democrats, they believe that they can win Senate races even if Harris loses the state. And that would be true in Arizona. It would be true in Michigan. It would be true in Pennsylvania. I'm not saying that will happen, but I'm saying Democrats think that, and some Republicans agree. Lastly, the legal stuff is, unfortunately, because there's no way to run a country, have an election, is going to be very intense. And we all know, both sides have heavily lawyered up, but Democrats in particular have to try to deal with their shortfall in early vote in Pennsylvania by curing a lot of these ballots that have flaws in them, dated wrong or no date or whatever it is. And so I think you're going to see a big fight over that. And those of you who remember, hanging chads and all of that, these things are very subjective, and there's no right answer, right? What's equal protection, what's fair if lots of voters who are disproportionately Democratic voters have failed to follow the rules. Is it fair to say those votes shouldn't count because they didn't follow the rules? Or is it fair to say, let's give them some leeway because every vote should count, and just because someone didn't follow the idiosyncratic rules doesn't mean we should disqualify their vote? There's no good answer to that question. But literally, the presidency could be decided on that if it does come down to Pennsylvania, because the way Democrats, and this is just one Democrats to make up for their shortfall, in the early vote in Pennsylvania is to try, or a way is to try to bring more of those ballots back in that were initially disqualified. And as I'm sure many of you know, we've already seen court rulings on that have favored Democrats mostly about the leeway that counties can have to bring those ballots back in. All right. There's a couple other things, but I'll save them for the conversation. Two things before we get to your questions. If you do want to ask a question, if you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Noah, my colleague, will be calling on folks because I'm on my phone, but raise them up and we'll get to you in a second. Number one, just a preview. Did a great call last night on the farm with a bunch of volunteers. There's Brian right there.
Thank you.
Brian, welcome in. Brian, we had a great call yesterday, right? Yeah. So tomorrow, Brian will be back on the morning meeting and we'll fill you in. But just incredible support from people, really talented people all across the country who are going to help Brian and his family do all the things that need to be done. And there'll be opportunities for you all to help contribute to building the business. And then second, let's bring Dan in. Unmute Dan, bring him in. And Dan, did you finish in the top 20? How'd you do today in the marathon?
How was the race?
It was great. Thank you all for the kind words. The goal was 3:30 and did 3:28. So
wow,
it was great.
And how do you feel?
A little at my age.
You look
a little sore.
amazing for just having run a marathon. I will say that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all for
what have you eaten since the race, Dan? That's all I really care about. What have you eaten since the race?
I have a little trouble eating right away. A protein shake, pizza. I will eat more pizza and a steak later. But I don't have much of an appetite right after I run.
Where are you gonna get?
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's a steak type of night. I'm gonna have a porterhouse on the grill for dinner for sure.
Great idea.
Awesome. I'll be eating at 30th Street Station, just so you know. All right, Dan, anything you want to say about the race at this point?
I am now somewhat cautiously optimistic. It is the most optimistic I have been about a Democrat winning in this last 4 years, or maybe 3 years. I still, I wouldn't bet on it, but Democrats are pretty excited, and some Republicans I've talked to confirm there is a slight movement with certain voters. And as we've said, Trump's up 1 or 2. It doesn't take a lot to be down, half of 0.01.
Yeah. Good. All right. Open it up. Noah, call on folks. Again, as always, tell us where you are. For those who don't know, who you're supporting and what's on your mind.
Okay. How about Jack Komaroff?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jack. I'm born and raised in New York, but I go to university in Palo Alto. So I'll be voting there, voting for Trump. And I have sort of two quick points / questions. One of them is, do you think in the next, or how long will it be before one of the two major parties will nominate a Jewish person for the office of presidency? And if so, which party do you think is more likely to kind of host that person? Secondly, being I would agree that Harris does not have a strong chance of the Sun Belt. So her path to victory is probably just Joe Biden's pre-debate path, which is just the 270 to 268. I was wondering if you think that has fundamentally changed, because as I mentioned last time from the platform, the betting markets are really not tapped into the political nuances. So the Harris odds for that path were like 7% last night, whereas her whole percentage to victory was like 45. So I bet on that path, which would have a $7,000 payoff, which was really undervalued compared to the actual chances she has, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Jack, I believe in free speech, but I'm mostly inclined to ban discussion of the betting markets here because I think they're idiotic. You're welcome to make money off of them, but in terms of predictive value, they don't know anything about anything. So I would say that her main path remains the blue wall states. I think that the only way I think she's going to win a Sun Belt state is if she's winning ever sort of battlegrounds. They're going to be the fall. There's a new poll out tonight going around the margin of error. JD Vance is going to New Hampshire, so I still think you need to keep your eye on that. But it's I ask Democrats all the time what the most likely Sun Belt win is for her, and they differ on that. It's not Arizona. They say the other three, but I don't think that's her most likely. I think easily her most likely path remains exactly 270. What's your first question? Oh, Jewish president. So
yeah.
my view on all these things is not when is the country ready or which party has some capacity to provide the person. It's absolutely just person related. So I don't think America was in some abstract sense ready to elect a black president. It's just Barack Obama was an awesome candidate who fit the moment. So my answer to your question is the Democrats, because I think there's no one in either party who's as close to having the necessary traits required compared to Governor Shapiro. So he's easily, to me, the most likely first Jewish president right now. And I can tell you, I thought was close second. There's some other people who might be, but I don't think they're close. So the answer to me is the Democrats, just because of him, not because of anything having to do with the nomination process or the mood of the country or anything else.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, hopefully
Thank-
after Shapiro, it'll be me.
Okay. You got a few years before the Constitution will allow you to step in, but be ready. Jack, thank you. Noah, next question, please.
Katie H.
Hi,
Hi, Katie. How's it going?
it's going okay. Hey, I have a really quick question for you.
First, before
what
you do,
do
Katie, first tell people who don't know, because we got a lot of new people, where you are and who you're supporting.
I'm in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I am still supporting no one, but with a caveat. What do you think Donald Trump's chances of taking Virginia are? Are they like still like it doesn't matter? Or do you think like my vote could actually be consequential this time?
I'd say 15%.
Okay, so not great.
Well, I don't know, 15%. Way more than zero.
That's true. So here's what I was thinking in the past week. When Joe Biden said that Donald Trump supporters are trash, I know that a lot of people said that that wouldn't really do anything. To me, that like hurt my feelings for a lot of people that I know that aren't garbage humans. And so I thought, like, if he thinks that about the people that I love, like I can't support this other party that thinks this about my friends and family. I don't know. Maybe I'm by myself, but that was kind of my thought in that.
Yeah. Well, I would say that Joe Biden didn't mean to say it, but a lot of Democrats actually do think it. But a lot of, I think, unfortunately, Republicans somehow that's and their part eradicate. But I don't think you say that just as Joe.
Sorry, I'm in like a spot on the street that I don't get I can't really hear you. I'll let you guys go to someone else if you can if you can hear me.
Hey, Katie, I'm adding Dan, our
Okay.
morning meeting host, who can help out a little while Mark's reconnecting. So why don't you guys proceed?
Hi, Dan. Congrats.
Dan,
Thank
you got it?
Yep, thank you. Thank you.
And take over. You take over.
Mark is back.
All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna keep Dan up here just in case Mark disappears again.
Okay.
Noah,
Yes.
bring someone
You're
else in,
back.
please. Yeah, bring someone else in.
All right. Thanks, Katie. Victor
Bye.
Patterson.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Katie. Let us know if you pick somebody. Victor,
Okay.
unmute, please.
Mark, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Until I think.
Victor,
Sorry,
go ahead.
can you? Okay, yeah.
think that's
described
Victor.
How the Trump campaign was being
Hey,
any
Dan
of
is
that
Victor.
as well.
Dan is
I'm a,
Yeah, no,
Hold on.
it's Victor, not you, Mark.
Yeah,
Trump.
Victor, you're cutting out. I don't know why you would be. Maybe you're didn't pay your Wi-Fi bill on your neighbors. But let's go ahead and mute Victor. Victor, work on your Wi-Fi.
All right.
And Noah, bring in someone else, please.
All right, how about Nick?
Oh,
Nick
that's
Fisher?
me. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello. Sorry.
Hi,
Long
Nick.
time watcher. Hi, Mark. I'm always sending you tweets on Twitter. Two quick questions. I apologize. I just got off work.
That's all right. Hey, Nick, remind people where you are, who you're supporting, please.
Oh, I am in downtown Chicago of all places, and I'm a gay man. My other half's a finance director. I'm an airline pilot. He was a big Biden supporter. We actually both are all in for Trump. So we're both big Trumpers.
Have you either of you voted for Trump in the past?
I did personally. And I sound kind of odd saying it, but the main reason that really got him is I live in the city of Chicago. If I turn my camera around, and unfortunately, the illegal immigration in our neighborhood has gotten so bad that it's just it's been really difficult, to be honest with you. I mean, at the front lines, I mean, there's a lot of buildings. I guess the one thing that a lot of people don't know with the illegal immigration problem that we've had is there's a lot of buildings in Chicago that have these like camera with an X signs on them.
Yeah.
So like you can't take pictures, but it's just become really difficult. But I had one question that I've been meaning to ask you guys for days. And it was, why does it seem that my family had my parents, not me, I live in a building, had like their Trump signs taken, and I always see Trump signs being taken, but I never hear of anyone taking other signs. Like I'm not going to take anything from anyone, but that's always been something that's kind of bothered me, because I always think, you don't steal other people's belongings, but it seems like when it's a Trump sign, it's always okay to take it. Second,
You think people are taking them because they're hostile to Trump, or they're taking them because they're souvenirs?
I mean, they're taking them because they're hostile to Trump. And I mean, I guess I
I think
kind
some
of
people are taking them
experienced
because they're souvenirs.
I mean, that's possible too, I suppose. I mean, this is something, but I wanted to ask you guys, because I saw that poll, that Iowa Seltzer poll, and I didn't put too much value in it, but I kind of looked back at like the New York Times polls in 16 and 20, and I was something that I followed, and I have a master's in finance and in business, and I noticed, the differences. At what point do we ever hold pollsters accountable? And I say that in the sense of, you have a lot of credibility, especially when people say like the New York Times and CNN is rated as an A pollster, or Marist is an A pollster. If you asked me though, these pollsters have never been right. So why do we give credit to organizations and, big entities when they've proven to not just be wrong, but be egregiously wrong, not once, but twice? I just kind of wanted to ask you, because I really respect you.
Well, in terms of sign stealing, unfortunately, lots of signs get stolen. I think more Trump signs get stolen because there's Trump derangement syndrome and there's Trump fandom, and I think people take them for both reasons. They're just more of a collector's item, and they inspire more anger. But signs get stolen all the time. I see it in my own eyes. In 2016, we're wrong. They're just not. The number that Hillary got was what Hillary got, and the undecideds broke towards Trump because of Comey and some other reasons. So they really weren't wrong in 16. They were more wrong in 20. But I think that people should stop treating polls like they're predictions. They're not wrong. They are done cheaply, more cheaply than ever. Methodology is really challenging in the digital age where people don't have landlines. So number one, polls are not predictions; they're snapshots. Number two, people should stop sort of building them up as straw men and expecting them to be accurate. I think if you're someone who says they were wrong, just ignore them. If you don't think they're good, stop sort of putting the pollsters on trial every 4 years or every 2 years. Just if you don't think they're good, ignore them. But there are good pollsters and bad pollsters, but even good pollsters have off polls. And although there is a lot of hostility towards Trump in the media, the polls are not wrong because the pollsters are doing polls poorly or corruptly to help to say Trump's not doing well. It is really hard to poll Trump supporters for a variety of reasons that I think most people know. So I just think hating on the pollsters is a mistake. You can be disappointed that there aren't economic models that support robust polling, because that's bad if people want polls. But like I said, I don't really get all caught up in them, and I think people who don't like them shouldn't get all caught up in them either. Just ignore them.
I appreciate you. I mean, like I said, we're kind of the oddballs, being the gay couple in the very, very liberal neighborhood. But the last thing that my dad says to me, and this is kind of what he told me to ask you if I ever got through. He believes that, he says, he gets called constantly. He never answers his phone. He said he wouldn't be surprised if Tuesday rolled around and Trump won 40 states. He said it wouldn't surprise him at all. Is that something that's even feasible or no? It sounds crazy to me.
He's not going to win. He's not going to win 40. He's not going to win 40 states, but he could win. I don't know. I'm bad at counting states. He could look. I think he could win all 7 battlegrounds plus 5 more states. I think that's plausible. I'm not predicting it, but it could happen. I think, but I also think Harris could win all 7 battleground states. We just, again, I think the biggest variable is the percentage of the vote that comes from women. And if it's 52 or below, I think Trump will win easily. And if it's 54 or above, I think she'll win easily. But
all right.
like
well,
I,
gentlemen,
like I said,
thank you guys.
Sure. Thank you for joining. Just there's just no reason to define your civic participation by how much you think the polls are off. It's just I don't think it's a healthy way to do it.
No, I agree with you. It's just kind of like that old joke, I think. And you hear a lot of people say, it's like trusting the accuracy of a weatherman, where they can get it wrong every day and they have a job tomorrow. And it kind of just makes me think of the same analogy, where there's no consequence. Unfortunately, you have a lot of sway on public opinion, but no one ever looks back and says, the day after the election, no one looks back and says, boy, did that plus 17 Wisconsin poll against, that Biden was up in Wisconsin really not prove to be more than an act? You know what I mean? No one really ever looks back.
But remember, they're not predictions. They're not intended to be predictions. So
no, that's very true. It just shapes public opinion.
Yeah,
gentlemen, thank you guys so much.
All right,
I
Nick,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for participating. All right, next, Noah.
How about Jean?
Me?
Yes.
Hi. My name is Jean Yarbrough, and I teach government at Bowdoin College. I'm in that elder demographic, and I voted for Trump both times, and I voted for him 2 weeks ago because I'll be on my way to Hungary on Tuesday, which I think is a great way to not have to deal with the anxiety of the day.
Jean, I've got a question for you. How many other members of the Bowdoin faculty are for Trump?
Only me, as far as I know. Nobody talks about it. I'm on sabbatical and I stay as far away as I can.
And what kind of political science do you teach?
I teach political theory, so I'm remote from these things. I teach Plato, Aristotle, the Federalist Papers, Locke, Hobbes, and all the good guys, mostly guys.
And did the other members of the political science faculty know you support Trump?
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay. All right. Sorry. What's on your mind, Jean?
What's on my mind is that I have been in contact a lot with Steve Hayward, and he posted on Powerline a list of the accuracy of the polls from 2020, and something Atlas Intel or something like that was the most accurate poll in predicting the winners. And Atlas came out the same time as the Iowa poll, and it predicted that it showed that Trump was ahead in all 7 battleground states. And yet, as far as I can tell, there's been no discussion of that. And I'd just like your thoughts.
Yeah. So first of all, Professor, I with humility,
No, don't do this. No, no.
We can see
Dan, feel free to step
What
in.
a poll is.
He'll unfreeze.
Yeah. Noah, you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
Mark, we
back.
just lost
Yeah,
you
you're
for a
back.
second.
Okay. Okay.
back.
They're not predictions, as you know.
Yes, yes.
So there's lots of firms like that this cycle, and the fact that some of them have had success in the past doesn't mean they're right this time necessarily.
It's like your
Okay.
investment counselor.
And it doesn't mean they're right this time, but it's also the case that they're not particularly transparent about stuff in many cases. Sometimes they are, but I don't like to publicize polls by places that don't have human beings associated with the polls who are accountable, who write up the polls and explain their methodology and explain kind of the narrative they see and compare them to their previous polls. So I'm familiar with that data. I'm familiar with their record and reputation. But I think, again, I just say, like, so if you're a Trump supporter, and you are, you look at that data and you say, here's some data from a group that has a track record of success. Why is that being talked about less than the New York Times polls? Okay. And I have total sympathy for that point of view. But I'll say
I'm
again,
just genuinely curious.
yeah, I can answer for myself, which is I don't like to shape what I think about the race or conversations about it, even in the most horse racing sense, around polls that around any polls, because I just think polls are not particularly informative necessarily if they're not done expensively. The real answer, I think, for the press is, and again, this is a sad truth, but it's true. If you ask the 10 most sophisticated political reporters in the country who don't specialize in polling, okay, what do you know about that poll? What's their track record? What's their methodology? Who are the people behind it? Who funds them? They would have no idea because they don't spend the time learning it. The only people who do are the polling experts, and the polling experts at like the New York Times and Politico, et cetera, they're generally invested in their own polling more than
The other guys.
the other. Right. So if I owned Politico or I owned, whatever, polling experts who every day wrote about every poll with extreme expertise, including relationships with the pollsters. So you could call them up and say, hey, I noticed that, your sample has the female voted 60%. Do you guys really think it's going to be 60%? Like it required that level of repertorial expertise and relationships and rigor. That's to me the only way to decide which polls to write about how to. Instead, it's all over Twitter and it's a slapdash thing. But I think the reason you don't read about that poll in the New York Times, besides the fact that they have their own poll, is that, as I said, they don't have the expertise to put it in context. And therefore, they stay away from it because they don't want to be accused of cherry picking polls one after another. And there's so many. So again, what we need in society, and we don't have, is an expert who can really write about them, who's not biased, right? Part of the problem is, most news organizations favor the polls that were bad for Trump. So you need a place that's not biased, that has a lot of expertise, and that sees the public need to put in context. Because you're right, you know that I'm pretty. I don't like polls, but I'm forced to deal with them. I'm pretty expertise in this. I don't feel comfortable writing about that poll because I don't know enough about it. That's the answer.
All right.
Maybe next cycle, you and I will get a big grant and we'll hire some smart young person to study all the polls and write a daily blog about all the polls that are out and what they mean. But that doesn't exist, unfortunately.
Colleagues who do that, but that's not my thing. That's why.
Right, Gene, thank you. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you very much. I hope to. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Noah.
Bye.
Noah. Bye, Gene. Thank you. Noah, who's next?
Brian N.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Tell
Can you
folks
all
who
hear?
don't
Can you hear me?
tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind.
I live in Kentucky. I have to say I grew up in Southern California, so I'm kind of a transplant. And I most likely will end up voting for Trump.
You voted for Trump in the past, Brian?
Actually, I went through my voting pattern. My first election was Ross Perot. I actually volunteered for the campaign. I've always been an independent, but I switched in 16 just because wanted to see if Trump would be able to knock the door down on the Republican Party and perhaps change it.
Yeah. Why do you
So
say
really,
you, why,
really
why,
did.
why do you say you'll only probably vote for Trump?
Because I have to fly out on Tuesday, and I'm going to try and make it before my flight.
Got it. So if you vote, you'll vote for Trump,
Yeah, but it's really only one issue.
which is
It really comes down to, and this was part of my question. I'm in finance, and outside of the reason I'm voting, I think the hidden piece that's not being discussed in this election cycle is the change from quantitative easing to quantitative tightening. All these economic issues that we have is a quantitative tightening issue. And so this is going to be the first election in a very long time where I think quantitative tightening and the issues that come from that really come to play. And so for me personally and my family, it's all about a potential NATO war draft. We have 2 children that would be of draft age. We don't want to go down that path. That's it. That's the number one issue. I know it's not everyone's number one issue. In finance, one thing that I see in the census data is if you're high school educated, you make $55,800. If you're college educated, you make $126,800. That's it. It's almost 3 times now. It's really widened out. So this quantitative tightening has really hurt a lot of people. So my question to you is twofold. Number one is, on the economy and these low propensity voters that kind of fit that high school educated demographic, are they going to come out in droves because of the current environment that we are in where we weren't before? And then my second question is on women. Us being concerned for our children in a draft, voted 3 times Democrat, 4 times Republican, 1 time independent. So I've only voted for really Trump on the Republican side. And the sports issue for women that have specifically girls. Do those 2 items affect the women vote? Because I hear so much about the women vote for Democrats, and we're sort of in this tug of war. My wife's a registered Democrat. I'm a registered Republican, really, though I'm independent. So we kind of rank our issues, and our issue is, our children.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you prioritize your children. That's great. The Trump campaign is counting on those folks to turn out. Some of them are regular voters, but some of them are low propensity voters. And Trump's chance of winning is highly dependent on those folks turning out. They might turn out on their own organically because they're inspired to, but it also might require the turnout operation. Some of it's that's been outsourced to outside groups, including one run by Elon Musk. I'd say that again, if Trump wins, part of the story will be that those folks, both organically and through the efforts of the Trump campaign and its supporters, turn them out. Why Republicans are overperforming in the early vote is unknown, but it's some combination of those things. So I think, as I wrote my newsletter this morning, the simplest way to think about the race is Trump turning out those kinds of voters, low propensity voters who are unhappy with the economy, versus the Harris campaign turning out women. Again, in both cases, some of it organic, some of it through effort. So I think, I don't know the answer to whether they'll turn out. I think, it's an important question. On the other issue, there's no doubt that and you hear women on this platform say that abortion is not the only issue for all women. There are cross-pressuring issues, including the ones you cited. And I think, it's hard, particularly even if you're relying on quantitative data, but certainly if you're relying on qualitative. You hear women on this platform, we all talk to women in our lives who feel strongly either that reproductive freedom is the top issue and therefore they're not considering some of the other things, or ones who say, sure, they care about reproductive freedom, or maybe they're pro-life, and there's other issues that are more important. So I don't think there's a decisive answer one way or the other, but I think was the spirit of your question head on. Yes, there are some women who are going to vote for Trump because of those 2 issues, and others, including inflation, as for a lot of voters, the most important issue.
Okay, well, thank you. I
Okay.
love the circus, and Dan, really like the fact that you just say it like it is. I know you made a couple comments that you've gotten some, some negative feedback from some Democrats, but I appreciate your openness and candidness, and I really love this forum. This is a great way for everyone to communicate, and whoever wins, I hope that it's good for our country, and I hope that we can bridge this gap between high school educated and college educated households in our country. Thank you.
Appreciate all that and agree with you. Noah.
Is Luca there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I had a question. I sadly wasn't able to make the meeting earlier with Seltzer about the poll coming out of Iowa, but what I saw accompany it was basically polling people on their most important issue, and number 2 was abortion on there. And I guess people kind of instinctively think that, since Democrats are winning on that issue, that means that she has a better chance than you would have thought. I guess if you have any insight on it, when they're asking people what their main issue is and they say abortion, is it asking an affirmative like you believe in reproductive rights, or is it just abortion is like as just a phrase? Because I'm wondering, since Iowa has like such a heavy evangelical population, would there be evangelicals who are saying abortion is their top issue just because they don't want Roe getting codified and taking back their state bans that they've put in place since Dobbs?
Right. So complicated and good question. Number one, sorry, I'm eating some apricots because I'm having an immense blood sugar issue. Number one, the good news is you can go watch the program we did with Ann on YouTube on demand anytime you want, and I recommend it. It's up there now. So in a big robust poll, you'd have and where crosstabs are released, but as Ann explains on the call, they don't release their crosstabs. You'd be able to say of the people who said they were pro-choice, how many of them said abortion was a top issue for them, and said people who said pro-life. In a big robust poll with crosstabs released, you'd be able to answer your question about how many of the people who say abortion is a big issue break down between pro-life and pro-choice. And of course, most Americans are somewhere between pure pro-life and pure pro-choice. Bill McInturff did a presentation off the NBC data a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, actually, that was in my Substack. You can go back and find it. And what he pointed out, which I think is super important on this question, is if you ask people the top issue, abortion ranks relatively low. But if you ask people, what's the one issue on which the candidate you vote for must agree with you, abortion ranks very at the top. Right. So that's a different way of thinking about how important it is to voters. And that could be, of course, either someone who cared about pro-choice or pro-life. But historically, when Roe was in place, more pro-life people had abortion as a top issue for them, as a deal breaker issue for them. Now it's depending on how the question's asked in the survey, there are people on both sides for whom that's a big deal. And I think this cycle is a little bit aberrational because it's in the immediate aftermath of the decision of Dobbs, but it's going to be an evolving thing, and whoever wins the White House, if Harris wins the White House, I think she's won't be able to succeed because the Senate's almost certainly going to be Republican, but she's going to see what she can do from the executive branch, including through executive orders, to try to restore some reproductive freedom that doesn't exist, not just because of Dobbs, but because of executive actions that were taken and not fully undone by Joe Biden. I think she'll go further with executive actions. But and if Donald Trump wins and has unified control, they've said they won't do anything on the federal level in terms of outlawing abortion or some other things, but they'll still be under pressure to take to reverse some of the executive actions that they had done originally that were undone by Joe Biden, and that will again lay the terrain down for how big an issue abortion rights is, reproductive freedom is for both parties going forward. So it's going to be a continuing evolving issue, and I think finally, almost any issue is difficult to poll. This issue is particularly difficult to poll because because, as I said, most Americans are somewhere between pure pro-life and pure pro-choice, and asking that questions about it in a poll that are nuanced enough to capture that is very difficult, very difficult. You can ask about sort of strands like, do you support exceptions for rape, life of the mother, and incest? You can ask how many weeks. You can ask, should there be a federal law, state law, etc. But most Americans have such a kind of an overwhelmingly complex view that quantitative research, I think, just doesn't really capture where people are. It's really, it requires like a lot of qualitative discussions and then an acceptance that the nuance doesn't really lend itself to a 20-question survey. Long answer, complicated issue. Thank you for the question. Noah.
Tanya Watson, again, welcome back.
Hi, thanks again for having me.
Sure, just remind people, because there are new people, on where you are and who you're supporting.
I am in Michigan, in a suburb of Detroit. I voted for Trump. This is my second time voting for Trump. So I voted for Trump last time, voted for Hillary before. And, you know, from a very red state, originally from Indiana. I think that what moved me to Trump was actually moving to states where they were not red states.
Yeah.
So just seeing a little bit of the difference. My question is focused around, I think it was I can't remember if it was the Washington Post or New York Times, but last week there was an article that said that if Trump wins, that is somewhat of an indictment on the media, right? That means that 50% of the people aren't listening. So I'm just curious what you think about, you know, whether we'll see real change in some of the propaganda on, you know, each side, right? But that leans heavily left often. Whether we think we'll see something that will be different.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, there wasn't really a change after 16. There was kind of lip service given to, well, we missed it, so we need to understand more. But the bias, you know, I've said this many times on this platform and elsewhere, the bias in the last couple of years against Trump has just been overwhelming. And that doesn't mean he's a perfect person. It doesn't mean he doesn't say outrageous things. He made a joke today about the press corps being shot at. He says and does outrageous things.
Yep.
And words worse than outrageous. But the press bias is pronounced. And I think if you're looking for an indication about whether the press is willing to understand the level of egregious bias, I think you look no further than the complete failure of accountability on the press Democratic cover-up of Joe Biden's loss of mental acuity. They acted for years like it wasn't happening. It was happening in plain sight. The American people saw it, but they pretended it wasn't happening. Then when it became necessary to help Nancy Pelosi force Joe Biden out of the race, the press cooperated with that. But then if you read the accounts of why Joe Biden got out of the race, it's all about, you know, he couldn't win, or, you know, Nancy Pelosi wanted him gone, rather than an acknowledgement, not only that he had a loss of mental acuity, but that the press didn't cover it for 7 years, even though it was obvious it was happening. So that suggests to me that there's a great desire to pretend that the press isn't biased, and to a great reluctance to acknowledge culpability. So I'm not really sure what the Democratic Party or the media will say if Donald Trump wins. I'm not sure how they'll explain it. I'm not sure what responsibility they'll take for it. I think, unfortunately, and I wrote an article about this 2 days ago. Unfortunately, the preponderance of blame will not go to, well, Donald Trump actually is talking about issues that a lot of voters care about, or the Democratic Party on some issues has gone too far to the left. It will be Joe Biden screwed up by staying in for too long, and Kamala Harris didn't give a good answer on The View. So I think they'll avoid taking, both the Democrats and the press will avoid almost entirely taking responsibility for what happened, or accurately describing what happened in totality, and rather just blame two individuals for their errors. Hope I'm wrong, but that'd be my guess. That'd be my guess.
You know, I fear that you're right. I think that, you know, unfortunately, and I voted for Trump, and I hope that he gets into office for many reasons, but and all based on issues. But the concern is that he won't be allowed to actually do the job that the people voted him in to do,
Yeah.
as a
Well,
result of this
yeah.
type of,
Yeah, but he'd have a better, if he does win, he'll have a better chance of doing the job if he stops
yeah, if he shuts up
being so,
sometimes, right?
well, not just shuts up, but if he actually reaches out, and if he has a appreciation for the feelings of those who will be so upset if he wins, and if he stop calling the press the enemy of the people, and tries to convince them to give him a fair hearing. I think, again, I could see why he'd be reluctant to do that, because I think the chances are pretty low. But I think it's incumbent upon him, if he wins, to try, because it's clear to me, and I think it's pretty clear to him and the people around him, both how the press has gone off track and why. And I think it's in his interest, and the country's interest, for him to give them another chance, but to really spend time on it, because it's important that we have a free press that's also a fair press. And I think he'd benefit from that. And I think it's not impossible, because, again, as much as I'm unfortunately predicting that they won't do a good job of taking accountability and changing their ways, it's not impossible. They'll need some encouragement. They'll need some incentive to do it, because most of the incentives they have are not to do it. And I hope he would contribute to that as much as I can understand him thinking it's a hopeless situation under the circumstances. Noah, maybe a couple more.
Thank you.
How about
Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you for coming on.
Steve, athlete for Trump.
Yes, you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Great, great. So, Mark, I'd like to, first of all, great platform, love it. I've been watching you for years, so I've known who you are, and Sean. Dan's new to me, but he's great as well. Learned from you, or learned about the platform from Megyn Kelly, as many have. I'm in California, so I'm kind of irrelevant, but I kind of want to speak back a little bit. I'll come back around quickly to today, but the reason I have athlete for Trump on, you probably know this, is because I wanted to get in the Bill Bradley deal the other day. And he was speaking about, how athletes, what was he saying? Athletes were, they go out and shake hands, and when it's all over and everything's hunky-dory. And I'm 72 years old, but I still race in triathlons. I was a athlete, football player through college, and I was a general partner of an NBA team. So I've been around athletes for a long time. And I wanted to ask him if he knew about a saying in athletics, which was this, and that is, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. So there's a difference. But the other thing I wanted to get to is just as far as polls, because I still am not a believer in where these things are coming down. I don't know what kind of effect any of the and again, I'm in California, so I'm not seeing the advertisements that you guys are seeing in some of the swing states. And but I'll give you an example of how it affected somebody in my family, who's my wife, who was not going to vote for Trump this time because she just tired of his mouth, tired of how he runs it, some of the things he says. But then I showed her, and I'd ask you a question, and that is, because I know what Alter said the other day about him not being a journalist. It's about his opinion, and then so I'm curious about how would you classify Meacham? Is he opinion, or is he a journalist?
Well, he's opinion, and he's also a speechwriter for Joe Biden, so he's
Okay.
a partisan.
Well, I don't know if you heard this the other day, but this is something my wife saw, and again, she's not going to vote for Trump. She was not going to vote for him at all, and Meacham came on, and she saw this, and I forget what program it was on, MSNBC probably, and he was talking about how the Trump voters it's all about nationalism, and he described nationalism as people who look like us, and we're the ones who are on trial, right? So basically, he was calling us racists, and that got her attention. And then a couple days ago, I had her take a look at the program, and this is when you had your angry little guest on for the second time, and you know what I'm talking about, and that's Alter. And when he came on, and you know what he said, I won't repeat it because you're asking for peace and whatnot, but you know what he said. And her response to that was, "I'm voting for Trump and put that sign on our yard." So I'm curious to see what kind of effects. So I'm also seeing on the media, and there's a perfect example. He, the guy's, he's angry and he's panicked. That's what I'm seeing out of him. I'm seeing it out of the legacy media on the MSNBC. I watch everybody on the MSNBCs and the CNNs. I think these guys are panicked. They know they're losing, and they're scared to death of losing their industry. I think it's headed
Yes.
to guys like you, and of course Rogan's captured everybody for years. But I think they're scared of losing their livelihood.
Yeah. Steve, are you saying your wife's voting for Trump because of Jonathan Alter?
That's one reason she's seeing
Yeah.
people piling on Trump
Yeah.
and saying all this Nazi. You've heard it all, the fascists and
Yeah.
the Nazis
Yeah.
and piling on. And guys like,
Yeah.
but she
Yeah.
she has then taken it personally
Yeah.
because they're not. Trump has never come out and said anything about, and this is everybody knows this. Has never said anything about that I'm aware of about Harris or Democrat voters. But Harris,
Well, he has. He's
I've
called
not
people
heard
who
it.
would vote
I've
for
not heard
Harris. He's called people who'd vote for Harris stupid. He said that about Jewish voters and other voters. But let me say this, okay?
Yeah.
You know how I feel about the Democratic Party's failure to appreciate the reasons that Donald Trump has support. I think it's been a huge mistake for them and a huge mistake for the country. I just ask you, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth or overinterpret what you said, but the tone of what you said to me, I say respectfully, is of a piece with what a lot of Trump supporters feel.
I'm sorry. Say that again. What was your question for me?
And I just ask you to think.
You're cutting.
We
You're
try to be
cutting
more
out.
clear. I did a lot of throat clearing. I did a lot of throat clearing because I didn't want to insult you. Can you all hear me? Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
Yep.
I think there's a chance Donald Trump will win. Okay. If he does, I would ask you to have some sympathy for the tens of millions of Americans who are really
yeah.
upset about it. So,
Yeah.
so see, some people criticize us for putting Jonathan Alter back on because they felt that his first performance did not reflect peace, love, and understanding.
Right.
And I understand that point of view, but I very purposely considered it. But I think it's important that you all hear the level of upset that they have already on the prospect that Donald Trump will win. I think it's important that you hear that. And it's one thing to hear it on MSNBC or CNN. It's another to hear it on our platform where it can be discussed and it can be heard in an environment in which we're trying to have the country have a chance to be together after the election. Okay.
Which is
So rather than get, and I say this all the time, rather than get upset by Jonathan Alter, use it as an opportunity to learn that Jonathan reflects tens of millions of people. So
no,
to say that his
I
point
totally
of view is
get that.
offensive.
I totally get that. What I was trying to let you know about is about how it affected, a woman voter, my
Oh
wife.
no, it was super
You know what I'm
interesting.
saying?
Super. I'm super.
I get it. And as far as the other side, if Harris wins, I'm not going to be angry, but there are a lot of people out there that I'm seeing in my family, people I know who are for Harris, and we're heretics. And
Yeah, no, I hear you, and there's a whole other category which we used to talk about obsessively, and we barely talk about anymore, which is the indictments. I know plenty of people who are voting for Donald Trump because they think it's lawfare and they think it's outrageous, and they're particularly angry to hear Democrats like Eric Holder and Kamala Harris say, if Donald Trump wins, he'll use the legal system to go after his political enemies. They find that rich.
Well, that's going to be a question. If he does get elected, are they going to start
and it's
right
rich
in on
that
impeachment?
they will say
If
that
he does get elected, are they going to start
Yeah.
right in on impeaching him again if he doesn't get the House?
Yeah.
So
they might, although you'll have the Senate, so that'll be that. But I totally get it, and we're here on this platform to try to diffuse both sides, and so while there's no doubt that a lot of people like your wife are thrown into the arms of Donald Trump ironically, by the very people who are trying hardest to stop him. I'd also say these people who are upset about Donald Trump have their reasons to be upset that are also valid reasons. And they're valid on the merits, and they're valid because they're the views of tens of millions of our countrymen and women.
No, I understand it. My wife is also is pro-life as well. So she's, she balances the issues and there's everything out there. So I totally get the platform. I'm with the platform. And if it goes away the way that I'm not voting for, I think our Constitution and our country it was set up by geniuses, and it will withstand whoever's elected, and we'll move on.
Amen. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming on. Very grateful to you.
Absolutely.
I apologize for my audio kicking out. I thought this highway would be good enough to make it through, and I was mostly here, and grateful to Dan for being here to back up, and congratulate Dan on his big finish. We'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow for the morning meeting, and appreciate you all popping on the pop-up at the last minute here, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in a few hours. Thank you.